Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girlz. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girlz.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girlz Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I'm here with my co-host, Michelle Clare. Michelle, how are you tonight?
I am doing well. How are you tonight, Patricia?
I'm doing okay. And we're getting an ice storm. So I am thinking of Arizona right now, wishing I was there with you.
Yes.
But instead I'm here.
Yeah, I think it's a sunny 78. So yes, you should come over.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Well, I think, good, at least one of us is enjoying that. I don't know, we may get trapped in here for a day or two, but it'll be all right. Eventually it will melt, so that's all good.
It will.
So, gee, I know. Well, tell us what you have going on. I know you always have stuff going on and great experiences for everybody.
I love what I do. I'll tell you that. I have online gallery readings coming up. I have an online webinar coming up. There's a lot of stuff online this month and next, and then May I'll be back in person. If you're in the Phoenix area, come up to Scottsdale. We'll be doing sound energy healing and mediumship readings. And I'll be working one of the Phoenix Psychic Fairs at the end of May. So, yes, I'm excited. You can find all my events at MichelleClare, CLARE.net.
That is great. Yeah, I always wish that we lived closer, that's for sure. So, anyway, but we've got a great guest tonight. You know, I've talked about Corey Goode for a long time and wanted to have him on the show. And tonight, yay, he's here with us. We're so honored, aren't we? Because he's the insider. So he's who we want to talk to because he knows what's going on. We've had enough disinformation. But before I bring him on, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my dear, dear friend, Betty Andreasen Luca, who passed away last week. And she was one of my very dearest friends over 35 years I have known Betty and her husband, Bob. And Betty was just amazing. She had incredible experiences with UFOs, with ETs, with government surveillance. She had it all. And she was an incredible artist. And she drew the ETs, she drew their spaceships and painted them down to the last detail. Her amazing paintings and drawings are just a testament to her incredible experiences. And I think it's also one of the reasons why the government was so hot on her tail, because she had all this information. And, of course, she was willing to always share it with our government, but they're so, you know how they are. They got to do everything in a darker way. So God bless Betty. I just can't say enough good things about her. She had a beautiful heart. Everyone she met loved her and felt better for knowing her. She just transformed people just by being who she was. She loved animals. She loved nature. She was devoted to her family and especially devoted to her husband, Bob. So she is a great and was a great light in the UFO field, and I just can't even tell you how much I miss her, and all of us who knew her miss her. So God bless you, Betty. We miss you, and I'm going to get Michelle to talk to you once you settle in on the other side so we can hear what you have to say.
That's right.
Yes.
She's going to keep shining her light bright.
Yes, she definitely will. No way to hide that kind of light. It's amazing. Like, we can only aspire to be like Betty, I'll tell you. So, Anyways, tonight, as I mentioned, we do have Corey Goode. Now, many of you already know who he is. He is described as the insider's insider and is a secret space program whistleblower and contactee, film producer, and content creator based on his experiences of over 20 years in the Unacknowledged Special Access Programs, including Project Solar Warden, a Navy SSP that patrols our solar system and beyond. Beginning in 2014, Corey has experienced increased physical contact with ETs and inner-Earth civilizations that prepared him to be a messenger to convey the importance of spiritual focus and inner world during Earth's transition into higher density consciousness, which has already begun. Retaining many insider contacts, Corey was credited as the first to leak Defense Intelligence Agency documents verifying the Pentagon's UFO investigative unit disclosed in 2017. So, Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on the show, and or you ladies, I'm sorry. And I'd like to say I'm sorry about the loss of your friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Betty was amazing, and I appreciate that. I know everybody does. Everybody appreciates your thoughts, and Michelle, yours also. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So, Corey, for the people that don't know you yet, but really want to know you, can you share a little bit about your experience? I know you've had an extensive experience over many years, but if you can give us a version of that so the audience that is unfamiliar with you can get familiar quickly with who you are.
Yes. Well, I'm an intuitive empath. I have, abilities like many in your audience do that, were enhanced through government programs. My grandfather, I had two grandfathers. One of them was a conscientious objector and was a part of testing for the military. They would test viruses on him and different things like that to be able to treat people on the battlefield that had similar ailments. And what they didn't tell him is that when they were injecting him with certain viruses, these viruses were carriers for making changes to his genome. And my abilities were turned on, apparently, as a part of that program. And when I was younger, I would see ghostly beings and had strange encounters that went away when I was about 12, but I had already been identified in the programs, as having abilities. So when I was about 6 years old, into these military programs, during school hours, I would be pulled over to military bases where I was trained in all sorts of paranormal type of things that we would call paranormal, but the ability to interface and communicate with ETs was among the top things I was trained in. And then at the end of that period, we served 20 years that we call a 20 and back in the secret space program. At the end of that, your age regressed and sent back into time pretty much to the exact same moment you left, closing a time loop that they exploit to fight this greater galactic temporal war, and they put you back, in your original timeline. And after I had my these three different 20 and back tours, after I was back and into my regular life, about between 2009 and 2011, I started having increased ET contacts again. They were contacting me outside of the programs and wanting me to work with them. And that's about where we are today.
Gosh. I mean, did you feel violated by this, or did you feel like this was a great opportunity, or both?
Absolutely, it was a violation. Anytime that if we were to complain, but we learned early not to complain, we were told to shut up we were government property. We were the result of some experiment they did, and they say that my grandfather signed papers and made it official that we were government property. It's, our lineage. So, it was not a compassionate program at all.
How many of you were there?
In the 20,
yes.
When I was a child, when I was being trained?
Mm-hmm.
When I was young, they would identify, what they try to do in these military programs is pull people in the military, that have abilities. But that's a small pool of individuals that potentially have abilities. So they start identifying children pretty early that have these abilities and groom them to come into the military to fulfill these roles. And sometimes they pull from outside of the military and choose civilians, but mostly it's, within the military. But there were probably from just my school district, like 3 or 5 kids. Normally we would have small group interactions and training, sometimes individual, and then we would all come together at the base or abandoned malls and other structures to do training and that sort of thing. But it was not like hundreds of kids. At the most ever assembled probably was, under 100.
Mhm. And were your parents aware of this?
They were aware that I was in a special school program, and that was it. So they knew I was being taken off campus from time to time, and that I was in special classes, but they did not know the extent of it at all. No.
Jeez.
Okay. Wow.
What a life, huh? Well, it certainly puts you in a very special position to have access to information that most of us don't have. And as we were discussing before the show started, we are inundated with a lot of disinformation, with things that are very suspect. Certainly we don't trust the government to divulge really anything of value because they're going to continue to control things. And what's your opinion on that? I mean, because a lot of people say, disclosure's coming. I don't think so. What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think any type of government disclosure is coming. The only thing that we're going to get from the current government architecture and archetypes and all of that is disinformation and distractions to distract us away from their corruption. I'm not seeing us on a very, on a full disclosure timeline at least. If we do receive information, it'll be information to deceive us and to manipulate us. It's not going to be, they're going to just release all of the information. That's not what the powers that be right now plan on doing. But we do have an alliance group that suffered heavy losses over the last 2 years, but it's still a ragtag group trying to fight, to bring about full disclosure, and also as a part of full disclosure, just the amount of criminality among, the world governments. All of that is what they've been working to, put out into the open. But of course, the negative, the enemy, owns all the resources that you would use to put this information out. So it's been very difficult to expose this, cabal.
So you're talking about the fact that they run the media, and the media's been lying to us for a long time. So you're talking about that, the media?
Yeah, they run the
also
media. They own the infrastructure. They own the cell phone service infrastructure, all the wires under the ground, and all of that infrastructure belongs, even if it's somewhat removed from the actual hands of the cabal. The owners of these platforms and architectures are manipulated and controlled. So, it's an amazing feat that the Alliance and those of us who are trying to get the truth out have. We have to be very careful how we word things. a lot of the information I've released, I've had to kind of change it up a little bit to allow it to get through the AI algorithms. We've had to be very clever, but to use the infrastructure of the enemy to expose it is a very tricky prospect, and that's what I've been working on doing.
Good for you. Really. I mean, we deserve the truth, and this whole corrupt situation is really more than I can stand to watch anymore.
It's sickening. It's pervasive and it's sickening. It's everywhere. It's in every level of life, and it's evil. It's bad, but it's also a part of the human condition. Something that, as a whole, we need to be able to diagnose and find a treatment for. This madness that repeats itself. We have all of this material science, all these different things that have improved, technology-wise, but we're just a couple steps away from the days of Noah, as they would call it, consciousness-wise. We're still not that different, on a consciousness level.
We're not as advanced as we should be.
It's troubling.
Yeah, it is. I know we've been watching people that we know we thought were kind of intelligent, and yet they appear to be somewhat brainwashed. And we even had someone talking about that on the show recently, neuro-linguistic programming that had been used against us. And some people, I guess, are a little more susceptible than others. Somehow Michelle and I escaped it.
Well,
but there are a lot of people who didn't.
Yeah, the whole third density trap, getting us stuck in our ego and using speech to communicate instead of, through our minds, connecting mentally and communicating like animals do a lot of times and how we used to. Now we're speaking, and whenever you speak to another person, even with the best intentions, when you're speaking, you're trying to manipulate that person into your understanding. Mm-hmm. And also, the speaking has a lot to do with spells. When you speak things, you start bringing them into fruition in a different way. So, humanity being trapped in this third density consciousness to where we're not as connected as we used to be or could be, and manipulating each other all the time.
That makes sense. Definitely. Now, we had Jeff Harmon on the show, probably December. And he's an astrologer, and he was talking about all the things that were coming our way. And he was talking about, because we asked him, okay, who's pulling the strings? Who's really in charge here? Because we know it's not the people we see in the public eye. So who's doing this? And he said, if you know their name, it's not that person. He said, and there's a lot of talk that, in fact, who's pulling the strings, they're not human. What do you know about this stuff?
Well, there are a number of different ways that, the cabal, these groups that practice this, what they call the old religion, which apparently goes back to Mars. It was brought here by what they call their progenitor race, these beings with the elongated skulls that came from Mars here many millennia ago, and they believe they're of this genetic line and that they are these gods, the lineage of these gods. And, there are remnants of that Martian group still here that have a lot to do with the financial system. But this new group came in, this Orion group, and the Martian group that this cabal worships had millennia ago fallen to this AI, artificial intelligence influence, this transhumanist agenda. And it was brought to them by these alien grays, this Orion group, and the reptilians and some insectoids and these tall, blonde, real beautiful-looking ETs were, doing some very deceptive things. Sorry, I got distracted. What
No, that's okay, because you're answering the question. It's just I'm wondering how many of them are really in charge. I've heard there's 4. One of them has hold of the media. One of them has hold of something else, and on it goes. So there's 4 main categories of control over us and our planet, and there are 4 heads
I would probably agree with that. The different the different 3 branches of the like the Vatican, D.C., and what was the third one that's a part of London, are controlled by different groups that are kind of working in harmony, to establish this new world government, and new world religion, which is transhumanism, absolutely 100%. They're going to promise immortality to people, through technology, and it's going to be very enticing. A recent poll done in America, very frightening results. 6 out of 10 people said that they would accept a brain chip if they could turn it off, like their cell phone. But God, whoever turns off their cell phone,
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
But it's very scary that we've been programmed to accept this transhumanist religion for a while, and a large portion of the planet is poised to fall for it. And it's going to come through, beautiful ETs that look like Fabio from the 1980s love novels, romance novels,
Yeah,
these
right.
beautiful people. They're going to come down to individuals, make them feel very special, that's one of the main reasons that personal contact was made off limits, because of humanity's distortions. And, too many humans, when they've been visited in the past by these types of beings, they began to get some sort of Christ complex, like, wow, I must be special. Why didn't they go to anyone else? They came to me,
right.
And then they start getting addicted to the power and the admiration, and it corrupts them. So, these beings are very selective and careful how they interact with us, because if they come down and a compromised individual starts spreading information, or they get carried away and they twist it, that ET, that positive ET, if it is positive, is now karmically bound to that situation. And through cosmic laws, it's kind of like a ritual. They have bound themselves to that situation until its resolution. So positive ETs are very, very careful with their interactions. They first meditate with us. They usually communicate with our higher self, and our higher self will tell them what type of communication we are ready for and what type of communication might be damaging to us. And, usually that's why most communication starts through dreams and through, in meditative trance states. A lot of communication begins that way, just to start grooming people and getting them ready, without giving them some sort of, Christ complex.
Mm-hmm. Right, some kind of appeal to their ego. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, you said positive ETs. Are there any groups of ETs that you consider, can you give us, names, or who do you consider positive groups?
Well, there are lots of positive groups, and a lot of them are literally our cosmic cousins within the local 52 stars of our local stellar neighborhood. And many of them are very advanced and have been working with us for many, many hundreds and thousands of years, through dream states, through working with scientists and philosophers, and, assisting them in these ways, knowing full well that our planet is under, the control of negative ETs. So they're trying to help us. There's kind of a struggle going on. They're trying to help us expand our consciousness, but these negative ETs are trying to compress our consciousness and exploit us, but through fear and intimidation and all of these low vibration feelings that they're then able to feed off of us. They're nothing more than physical and etheric parasites when you get down to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, that makes sense. And, oh my goodness, this is such a big rabbit hole. So there's been a lot said that, we've heard this before. Oh, they're not allowed to interfere. They're not allowed to go against our human will. I don't think that's true. Not after what I'm seeing. It doesn't look like that's true at all. Maybe the good guys don't interfere, but the other ones do.
People confuse that with our collective consciousness, our collective will, and our own personal will. As a collective, we overpower the will of others with our collective decisions and behavior all the time. So we're, on a personal level, we're violating personal will constantly, all the time. And negative ETs that have come in to our ancestors, even our ancestors long ago, that made deals with these ETs and made handshakes and agreements and blood oaths. They, even though it was them, not us, that bound us. These blood oaths that they made and these spiritual ceremonial things tied us to the situation, no matter how positive we are or not. Even if we're like a starseed, we came from another density and we're here to spread love and try to raise the vibration. We forget who we are and we're born into the system and we're subject to all of the hardships and, the negativity. And then we have to fight our way back up, through through the densities to get back out.
It's a big, tall order, I think. It really is. There's a lot of challenges in this.
It's not for the faint of heart.
I guess not. Yeah. So it's quite possible that what we've heard is in fact true, that these entities are controlling, and we don't know who they are. We don't know their names. We've never seen them before, and they don't want us to see them. They want us to think it's our lousy government, poor leadership, whatever. But they have control over these puppets. How do they control them? Do you know?
Well, it's not only through religious beliefs, but these people are controlled by entity attachments, and they're also controlled by, some of them inject nanites into their bodies and become avatars for this AI, whatever it is, this being from another reality that came into ours, and it's an electromagnetic thought form that is all over, is everywhere, and it's working a lot through technology and the electromagnetic fields of living beings, but these technologies, these nanites and brain implants, are directly accessible by this negative entity.
But are they also promising them great wealth and power and, some of the basic things that these people, these criminals, would be interested in having, and they give them that, and then if these people don't do what they want, they get rid of them? I mean, how does that all work?
If wealth motivates them, a lot of these different people have all different types of sick appetites that they are able to quench inside these programs, and far darker than money. So, and a lot of things are done through blackmail. They compromise people and they force them to do it. And they'll monitor them for a long time, and they'll find out, oh, this person likes young women. I bet we could entice them with really, really young women. And they slowly find a way to entice them. Or if the person's already just a total perv, then, they're easy pickings. They walk right into the trap, and you don't have to pay them millions of dollars or promise them all of these things other than, you promise not to expose them.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. We've heard talk about that with some of the Supreme Court justices, that they've been compromised, and as a result.
Yeah.
Have you? Can you talk about it?
Oh, God. No. That's very, very dark stuff going on in the Supreme Courts among, several of their staff and these actual people. It's very compromised.
What a shame. Oh my goodness. Well, let's visit another topic, and this is one of our audience's favorite topics. They want to know all about Antarctica. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, what do you want to know?
What in the world's going on there? I mean, people have talked about and leaked photographs of these huge stairways, obviously made for giants. All of those military people from all over the world are down there. Why are they down there? What's happening?
I don't know if I've seen the photographs you're referring to, but yeah, I mean, there was, over 55,000 years ago, the Martians that I talked about earlier, the elongated skulls, there was a solar cataclysm, and their planet was damaged badly. Atmosphere mostly stripped away. So in their last three motherships, which in the secret programs, they jokingly refer to them as the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. It brought all of these pre-Adamites first to the moon and then down to Antarctica, where there was an even more ancient ET, a mysterious ancient ET group base that had a lot of technology that they were studying and exploiting. And they crash-landed there, all three of their craft crash-landed. And they built Atlantis, the mythical Atlantis from the, remnants of those craft. They cannibalized the craft and made an advanced civilization. And then over time it spread out, and they were really into genetics. So they started genetically splicing, creating all of these different giants and different chimera and mixtures. And, that was that was like one of their big technologies was, genetic manipulation. Well, at the end of the last cataclysm, about nearly 12,000 years ago, a giant wave went over Antarctica and flash froze. And then over the millennia, snow was piled on top of that. But when the wave crashed over that ancient civilization, it destroyed most of it, but parts of it preserved. And when we first discovered it, I remember when I was reading it on a smart glass pad. It was in the military program. It was this almost magical piece of technology to access information. They were referring to what they found under the ice as they called it a Pompeii on ice. And as many of you remember, Pompeii was, the island where the volcanic ash covered this whole civilization for millennia, and then it was discovered, I believe, in the 80s. Well,
right.
It was during the
it killed everybody.
In the 80s. Yeah, but during the 80s, I think is when they discovered a lot of this in Antarctica. And they found all of these bodies frozen and all torn up and beat up from rolling under waves and being thrashed about, all over the place, and destroyed buildings and a lot of remnants, pieces of technology that had all broken apart. And then they found areas that were preserved. And in one of those areas, they found the skeletons of one of these giant motherships. And inside them were hundreds of beings in a type of stasis. And some of them on the lower level were these actual, what they called pre-Adamites, or these progenitors from Mars in stasis. And then on each floor above them, they had their genetic creations in stasis. They had, some very strange beings in these chambers. But they discovered this, and they left it intact. And then they found remnants of living pre-Adamites, or whatever you want to call them, these ancient gods that the Cabal called them, that were taking care of the pods, these stasis pods, and were keeping certain religious texts safe and that sort of thing. So after that occurred, in the 80s, when they really started making contact with that living remnant of the pre-Adamite group, and they found all of these temple complexes that look Aztec, very Aztec, after they located this and excavated it some, you started having all sorts of different cabal known leaders coming down to Antarctica. It was kind of like a cabal Disneyland. They were all coming down and going through all of these, like a giant anthill of tunnels through the ice that they were traveling through, and they would come around a corner and you'd see a big Aztec building sticking, just partially exposed, and then they would see all of these wondrous things, and to them, they were going and walking in the footsteps of their ancient gods. So it was just it's this really big deal for them. So that's a lot of what's been going on. But in addition to that, we have old Nazi bases that were handed over to us, in the 50s and 60s that secret American groups took over. And there are other countries that under the ice that have some amazing bases. They're using very advanced submarines that use electromagnetic propulsion like a UFO would, and they're as big as cargo ships, and they carry cargo containers, and they're ferrying stuff back and forth from these bases, through underground rifts in deep under the continents. It's so
there's
amazing.
A lot going on there. It's not just one thing. There's many things happening there.
Many things. And then we have military corporate types closer to the surface of the ice that have all these bio labs. They're developing all of these horrible genetic, horrible diseases. They're also playing around with cloning and doing some very unethical cloning types of things. There's a lot of very, very bad stuff going on down there.
Now, we heard a story about John Kerry visiting this area, and that whoever was down there, whether it's pre-Adamites that were out of stasis, they didn't like him much. And from what we heard, they kicked him out and said, don't ever come back. And when his plane was taking off from New Zealand, there was a massive earthquake, and it was kind of a message, like, we mean what we say. That's a story. I don't know if this is corroborated anywhere, but that's one of the stories that's come out. And then another story. Oh, go ahead. No, there's another story.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's hard when we can't see each other. Well, the other story I just wanted to mention, which you may have heard about, is a production team that was there. And they disappeared. They were never found, but their tapes were found. And the military refused to return the tapes to the production company. Have you heard that one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah, and also what a lot of people will find interesting is that from major universities in South America, North America, Europe, and Asia, some of the top scientists and researchers at the major universities have been brought to these locations, and they've been brought down there. They signed major NDAs, and they shot videos of them walking through, talking about what they're seeing, along with other experts. And I was told that someday these videos were going to be made public, and that these people are keeping quiet because they've been promised that they're going to go down in history, in the research history of, this ancient civilization that shouldn't exist. So there are a lot of people at different universities. I've had some people reach out to me that have spent time down there, that have all given me bits and pieces of information that are, very interesting. And I have a number of insiders from Antarctica that I'm speaking to right now and working on, some television shows that, we're going to be doing, that we're going to bring forward some of these insiders that have seen the craziness in the UFO community and don't want to come forward. All the legit people don't want to come forward right now. If they do bring information forward, they want to be anonymous, and we found ways to guarantee their anonymity in doing these shows and documentaries. So in the next couple of years, a lot's going to start coming out about Antarctica. What I was told was that the videos that they had recorded of Antarctica and the different things that they found, frozen ancient animals in the ice, they're going to release that if a huge scandal or something pops out that's about to, really cause huge problems for the cabal and their one world government transhumanist agenda. They have things like this set up to release as distractions. So whenever you see some big information released from the government in their right hand holding it, immediately try to get a good look at what's in their left hand, because it's almost always a distraction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true, Corey.
Was COVID a distraction for something, in your opinion?
I think it was a active war and a catalyst to be able to fully implement track and trace, which is a huge part of the one world government agenda, to be able to track and trace every individual. So track and trace is a huge part of this, being able to electromagnetically track people. So that's a big part of it, and also to through the fear and the emergency of the illusion of emergency, they were going to bring forth a lot of their fascist infrastructure changes out of the benefit of humanity, they would say, but it was actually just setting up the walls around us, the structure around us, of our own prison.
Right.
Goodness me. Now, what about these pre-Adamites? Whose side are they on? Are they part of this support for the cabal and the Nazis and whoever else nefarious is down there? I mean, I also heard a story, this is an interesting one, that when the military obviously is there all the time now from all different countries on our planet, and there was a big evacuation that took place, like red alert. The sirens went off and they had to get everybody out because the rumor was that one of these beings was coming out of stasis. So I was just wondering, what if they come out of stasis?
Well,
whose side will they be on?
They're
all out.
Stasis already. Yeah.
Oh, so they're already out.
Yeah, the cabal went and basically turned off the machines and brought them out of stasis because they were afraid of what was going on, with, the everything with the Orion group, that their plans for this one world government, transhumanist government, was not going as smoothly as they expected when they have gods helping them, So they went to their old god to wake them up to find out what to do. But these pre-Adamites, these ancient Martians, they fell to this transhumanist agenda far before we were ever conceived as a civilization. They fell to the transhumanist agenda. They injected themselves with nanites. They worshiped this AI. They went the dark path. These beings did not go the positive path. They went the negative service to self path, and they're still stuck in that, and they're of the same frequency as the reptilians and the grays and the humans, the negative humans. Let's not forget that these ETs are really bad, but humans can be some of the biggest monsters, in the universe.
No question. That's true. Unfortunately, it's true.
They're afraid of us. They don't want us flying around in space right now. We're dangerous, unpredictable.
We are. Yes, they should be afraid. So all of these things are now out of stasis, wandering around down there. And so what is their agenda going forward? Is it to enslave us the way they were enslaved?
Well, they weren't very happy about being awakened. They were in that stasis chamber they were trying to wait out the next solar event, which is supposed to happen, in the next 10 years, 12 years. This solar event's overdue. So the solar event has a huge effect on their nanites, and it also affects the actual timeline. And they were hoping that humanity was going to choose a negative timeline, and that after the solar flash occurred, it would lock in that timeline, and they could come out and pick up where they left off. But they were awakened before the solar event, and they freaked out, and they were removed from Antarctica by this galactic super federation type of group of advanced ET beings that are supposed to be policing and governing trade and interactions between civilizations in our galaxy, but they hadn't been doing their job as they should in the past. But they are now, because we're getting close to the solar event, they're starting to become a lot more active.
So what can we expect from them? I mean, it doesn't sound like they're going to be our best friends, but it also doesn't sound like they're very pleased with the cabal at this point.
It's right now. Yeah, they're not. They weren't very pleased with the cabal, but right now, they've been removed by positive ETs. They're going to go through some sort of trial at some point, so they're pretty much off the table. They're not on the playing field right now. The main ones that we're dealing with are the Orion group, and they're connected with the reptilians and these insectoid groups, and they're manipulating our consciousness and creating fear, and the planet, turning the planet into like a giant power source for them and this AI god they worship. Because when we put out misery, pain, and fear, they absorb it, and this energy goes to this other realm where their AI god is, and it feeds off of it. And each of these beings that have these nanites and brain chips, they get an energetic kickback and a high and sustenance, and so they're feeding off of it as well. So they're like heroin addicts. And if we found a way to shut off, as some of our cosmic cousins, they were in the same situation as us on other planets, and they overcame these beings. And what we have to do is find a way to shut off all the fear. If we become angry, it's okay. If we're angry at them, and if we want them off our planet, that changes the energy. They're no longer feeding on us. But if we stop the misery and the fear and which all this propaganda is helping perpetuate, that's going around, these beings, they're like heroin addicts. If you cut off the heroin, they go into this horrible withdrawal state, and they're within a few days, they're no longer a threat.
So we need to starve them out.
Yes. And the best way to do that.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is to unplug from all of this propaganda and disinformation that is most of it, 90% of it is total BS. And your emotions are growing and growing and building off of total BS, and you're feeding these beings. You're feeding them. Unplug from all of it and just focus on, inward growth, as well as protecting your home from all of these negative entities. Negative entities are attacking light workers and people that are trying to walk the positive path like crazy right now. And you have to find out and learn ways to protect yourself from negative energies and negative beings that are feeding off of you or affecting you. A lot of people in the light worker community, they have they're married, or they have a family member or a friend that's not into the spiritual growth, that are being manipulated by spiritual beings, shadow beings and other negative beings to affect their behavior, and in doing so affect your vibration. because if you're impervious and you've done all the work, and they can't affect you directly, through your different traumas and insecurities and all of these different ways they have of manipulating you, then they're going to use someone close to you. And so you have to find out ways of recognizing what is going on, not getting emotionally triggered yourself, and finding out different ways of, energetically clearing areas and people, yourself, and I'm doing a course on all of this. If you go to ascensionworks.tv, I'm doing a course about it. But, I think it's imperative that people unplug from all of the propaganda and focus inwardly, and also focus on their homes and their families, protecting them energetically.
How do you protect yourself and your family? Obviously, you guys are very prominent in this field. So what do you do?
Oh, wow. Well, not only that, both my children have abilities, and they're always attracting ghosts and that kind of stuff to us. It's crazy. But we have, negative people out there that have been using black magic on us, and just people that hate us, that have been sending us a lot of negative energy. We had to learn different ways of, pouring salt around the perimeter of our house with using the intent of it being a barrier, a protection against all negativity. We smudge the house. We find areas where, like, if we've had arguments or there's been negativity, we spray down that area with water that has salt in it, with the same intention of cleaning and protecting. Like I said, we smudge. We put tar water up with the same intention around windows, and we've strategically placed crystals that have the intention required, organite and different things around our home. We've learned to do our own type of spiritual protections, and it's a year and a half ago, we were in our old house, which had a type of portal in it that was created by black magic from these negative people. It was horrible. We had constant activity in the house. It was constant activity. And since we've moved to this new house and we found all of these great ways to protect ourselves from the energetics and the negative beings, this has been nothing but peace and serenity since we've, in the last year, since we've moved to this place and put these methods into practice.
Well, that's a very comprehensive program you have. Appreciate you sharing that with everybody.
Sure.
So people can also take your class. Now, again, where do people go to find this, to sign up for this class, Corey?
Yeah, ascensionworks.tv. It's called Surviving Ascension. We also talk about, when to cut cords in relationships, and how to cut cords in relationships you've already left where there's still energetic cords. We talk a lot about energetic protection and healing and being able to move on from traumas and a lot of different things. We're really excited about this course, even more than our others. But ascensionworks.tv is the place to go. Yeah.
That's where to go.
And also my graphic novel is done. If you go to disclosurecomics.com, you can check that out. And it's looking very likely that that's going to be turned into a scripted series in the near future. And Disclosure Comics, we're going to start doing a lot of different graphic novels and comics based on a lot of my information, stuff that's happened, a lot of truth. And we're going to do it in a way that we're going to be able to start bringing it to television, documentaries, video games, and different ways to start affecting people's consciousness all around, helping them understand what oneness is and teaching them that going towards a spiritual ascension and a service to others path is far more valuable to them in the long run than a service to self and a transhumanist path. So, using the infrastructure of the enemy to put out this groundbreaking, consciousness-changing information is what my current mission is, and it's going very well right now.
Good for you. That's wonderful. You know, it reminds me of the
for
Borg.
Everyone.
Yeah, right. You know the Borg on Star Trek?
Yep.
Do you remember them? It just sounds,
Yep.
this transhumanism, it just sounds like the Borg.
Yep. Well, there's, all sorts of TV shows where they brought in, what was it, Battlestar Galactica. There's, our subconscious is trying to warn us. It's trying to warn us. We had positive ETs come to us in the 40s and 50s and 60s and say, listen, the people you're making deals with, you're basically making a deal with the devil. And if you disarm, we'll give you all of this technology and bring the world peace. And the consciousness of the time, right out of world wars and all of that, was like, well, this other group's going to give us advanced technologies and weapons to help us defeat our enemies. So all of that hippie crap you're saying sounds great, and maybe we'll be there someday. But right now, the real world is this, And so they went with, the Orion group and all of the technology and building the infrastructure to allow this transhumanist agenda to progress and basically hand over the planet and all of the people to this Orion group.
Now, what about Eisenhower? Was he approached by the good guys or the bad guys? Because we know he was approached. Both. There's no question.
He was approached by both.
By both.
Truman and Eisenhower. Truman and Eisenhower met with the positive and negative, and the generals and the different people that were secretly, like the majestic people that were starting to form, had too much influence, and they went and they already, these gray ETs come and say, hi, we basically worship the same God you do, and it clicked too well because, their progenitor race had already fallen to the Orion group and formed a religion around transhumanism, and it was exactly, they're basically telling them this old religion, we're going to bring it out, and everyone is going to learn the truth about creation, but they're going to be guided into this transhumanist future, and that's what the negative groups are manipulating cabal groups to do.
Not good. So we really have to do our homework here. I want to ask you a question, Corey. It's a little bit off topic, but you may know the answer. I think it was last summer, or was it the summer before? There was an event at an observatory in New Mexico. And it was, the observatory was shut down, the town was evacuated, the sheriff was pissed off because nobody would tell him what was really going on. There were black helicopters over the observatory. Do you know the real story on this one?
Well, I was told a couple of different things, and one of them had to do with, so imagine the problems that the secret programs have. They have all of these ships and other types of infrastructure out in space in different Lagrange points, and also, slowly traveling around in different types of orbits doing their work. And they have all these pesky telescopes down here on the planet looking outward.
Right.
The reason that they make people pass satellites is not only because there's a long line of experiments that different scientists want to do, it's that they have a log of where every satellite is going to be pointed at any given time, and they can make sure assets are not within view of these telescopes or within view of their telemetry, if they're infrared, if they're radio telescopes, different types of telescopes even. So if one of these if something slips through and one of these facilities picks up something, and the scientist on duty behind the desk goes, holy crap, look at the screen, do you see that? And he picks up the phone and he starts calling the university he works for or whatever. Immediately red flags go off, and feds will raid the building and lock it down, and all these non-disclosures get signed, and they're debriefed, and then you never hear anything, So they have things like that occurred, but I heard a couple different things. I don't know for sure what happened at that facility, though.
Yeah, because there was
also heard some
one more piece.
About, I heard some
weird
things
ahead.
that was going on in that local postal system department.
They were trying to blame this whole thing on a guy that had pornography, which is so ridiculous.
Right.
But there was also a body found of a Belgian tourist at a trailhead. I think. Not, remember that one? Not too far. Now, according to my source, who was in touch with the sheriff's department out there, they never released that tourist's body back to the family ever, which is rather odd. So there was nothing talked about as to what happened to him.
What occurs is they have a group of people that they'll show up in like FBI uniforms and any type of uniform that needs to be used. But these people are this global command group that work with the cabal keeping secrets. And there are certain situations, like if you happen to walk up on a crashed UFO, and these people are either about to be there or they arrive on the scene while you're there, they're going to kill you. They are just going to kill you. You're going to be a liability that is removed. And if someone saw something that they weren't supposed to, they were probably killed in some fashion. And if they don't give the body back, that usually tells you that they don't want the method of death revealed unless they return it, after it's been cremated.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, that makes too much sense knowing our military and our government. But there was another piece to the puzzle, which was a strange odor. So people were talking about that there was a strange odor. And one of the theories was that there was an ET that got loose from an underground facility. And he was, I guess, going to that observatory trying to basically phone home. That was another theory about what was going on that day.
I don't know. I would have to know if that was a radio telescope or an optical telescope. It would just depend. But isn't
that one interesting, though? I like that one.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Now, I know Michelle asked you earlier about friendly aliens, and you've had some good experiences with the blue avians, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they are basically what we would consider angelic. They existed about 2 billion years ago in our solar system and in other solar systems close by, and we refer to them as the ancient boulder race. We don't know a whole lot about them. They just kind of disappeared, and they have ascended to our higher realm, and they're trying to ascend further, but they can't because they're karmically tied to us in our solar system for some things that they did long ago. And so, even the most angelic, positive beings have an agenda. They're karmically tied to us, or there's some reason why they need to do what they're doing, and they're being of service to others, but they're also being of service to themselves by helping themselves. Each time they help us advance, they can advance a little bit further.
How interesting. So you've spent some time with them, and how do you communicate? Do you do this all telepathically?
Yeah, with them, it's absolutely all telepathic. With some of the other beings from our local stellar neighborhood that are positive I've met with, like Mika and his people, they're from like Alpha Centauri double star system. They are very, very positive, and they communicate with me anyway with a combination of speaking and giving me pictures, smells, tastes, visualizations, at the same time. So it's kind of a multi-layered communication, and different beings, not all of the beings communicate the same way. When I was very young and I was in the programs and they were teaching us to interface, is what they call it, with beings, we were taught to interface with several different levels and types of beings because, depending on their physiology and how advanced they are, they're either all telepathic. There are even some that they communicate telepathically while making sounds, not words but sounds, but also parts of their skin going bioluminescent, flashing. It was like this symphony of communication. Some of these different, there are many different types of communication. It's not like any being you run into, you're just going to connect with them in the same type of mental telepathic way. You've got to kind of fine-tune yourself for every different type of being. And after each communication you have with them, you get more and more accurate and comfortable with them and the way they communicate, and you develop kind of a a relationship. You start getting more context. The more they communicate with you, they will use different types of visualizations than what another human would use in a situation. And so you've got to find context for that visualization. And so with what is being spoken or communicated otherwise, you've got to tie that visualization in and try to understand their point of view and their context that they're trying to communicate, and not just use human context and and how we would interact with other humans. Use that type of context with them. You have to forget all of that and be open and kind of build it on the fly as you're communicating with them.
Mm-hmm. So they sound like enjoyable, that you like the blue avians a lot, and you've met others that are also friendly and easy to talk to, I guess. You're learning a lot from them. They're not threatening at all.
And easy and exciting to talk to, but it can be very exhausting. It takes so much energy to communicate on these different levels with these beings, and also changing your mindset to not just think human context when you're getting information from them, because you'll lose a lot of the meaning of things, and it can be very mentally draining and exhausting. After I've had some of these communications, Stacy, my wife, she will tell you, for 3 days, I'll sit there and hardly speak and just stare at the wall, going over it all, over it all, before I can really start talking about it.
Gosh. Wow. I had no idea it was like that. That's really hard work then at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's intense.
That is very exciting, though. You get to meet new friends. That's very different friends, which is great. Tell me a little bit more about the abduction scenario, because obviously we've talked to a lot of abductees, and some of them had very positive experiences, some of them had really terrible experiences. Are people still being abducted? Are you still hearing about these cases? According to Daryl Sims, it's still going on.
Oh, yeah, it's still going on. And, it will continue. It's been going on for a long, long, long time. And, it's multifaceted. I was shown what was happening to a lot of these people. And, they're abducting people physically and also etherically. I saw a machine where when people were asleep, they were pulling them up in their consciousness up in their dream states, and then holding them in a field where they were trapped, and putting in energetic implants and taking off pieces of their essence and putting them in storage, or taking that piece of essence and programming it and putting it into other people. Doing all sorts of weird stuff on a spiritual consciousness level, but also on a physical level. They're manipulating our genetics, by releasing viruses and doing sorts of other things. So, and by selective breeding, doing all sorts of crazy experiments. It's a multi-leveled, faceted experiment, and it's all about interfering with our ascension and evolutionary process to, fulfill their own means. And they just want to keep us from expanding to fourth density consciousness. As long as we're in third density consciousness, we are perfect for them to feed off of. When we flip over to a fourth density consciousness, we all become more connected with each other. Deception becomes almost impossible. You see everything for what it is, and the good pulls away from the bad, and they just kind of separate from each other because it's so obvious. You can't hide. If you're negative, you can't hide amongst the positive and pretend you're negative. You just can't do it at that point. So they're trying to keep us from evolving, which is where we're supposed to be going to, our next level. And they've kept us from making that evolution a few different cycles. And they're trying to keep us again. They're trying to keep us, contained to where they can feed off of us and eventually get us into the transhumanist timeline to where, we are basically them.
Sick. Well, yeah, control by fear is their plan. That's obvious. And now we've had Dr. David Jacobs on the show a couple of times, and he talks about the hybrid program that they're involved with, and that they've actually created a lot of hybrids. Have you met any of them? Have you had any experience with the hybrids?
Yeah, and there's all different types of hybrid programs. Excuse me. But yes. We've found all different types of hybrids working on different bases in different SSP craft. There have been hybrids that have come in to help work and develop certain technologies. And, it just depends on what level of hybrid we're talking about. These beings have slowly been hybridizing many different genetic strains from across the galaxy into us. We are very little of whatever original genetic essence was, whatever we were in the beginning on this planet. We've had, these are genetic farmer races. They have done all sorts of experiments. They've traded genetic materials across the galaxies, and they use all of this in their experiments, and they splice all of these different genes into us, and they put in, and we've been grown like, kind of in a petri dish for a while. And they even affect our consciousness by controlling our religions and how we perceive, the spiritual realm. They create all of this left versus right, up versus down stuff to keep us divided and not coming together into a cohesive group consciousness. We're more of like a schizophrenic group consciousness because of their.
That's a really good description.
Really are.
True. That's really true. Well, I know David talked a lot about how when they grow these hybrids in their petri dish or column of fluid or whatever it is they put these things in, they don't get to know and learn human attributes. So they need to be trained, is what he was saying, and that's why they were continuing to take abductees and force them to train these hybrids how to act human. You've heard that? Yeah.
When they get to a certain age, they get to about 18 years old, they will, if there's a abductee, a person that's been repeatedly abducted or a contactee, a lot of times they will manipulate them into a situation to where they subconsciously become roommates with one of these hybrids. And they start, but they don't consciously know what they are, but on some level they do, because they kind of take them under their wing and start, training them how to be a human, basically.
Yeah. This is all so incredible and yet believable, given how much has been kept from us for such a long period of time. I find that very sad that so much information has been hidden. So we're working with very little, with hardly any of the truth. I mean, that's why we're so grateful for you coming on the show and
thank you.
talking to us.
And it's so it's hard to find the truth, but right now is the time of times when it comes to disinformation. I mean, nothing you're hearing from all of these different truther communities or the mainstream media, none of it, it's not true. It's right now is a very difficult time to know what's going on. That's why we really need to unplug and focus inwardly.
Yeah, because now they've thrown this Russia-Ukraine situation at us. And it's like, everybody rah-rah Ukraine and these poor people, and they create this, not that it isn't these poor people, obviously, being bombed or shot at, but there's more to this story, and
a lot.
That's what we don't hear. A lot.
Yeah.
Okay,
I talk to, on a weekly basis, I talk to generals and colonels and people really, NATO people. And from what I've heard, a lot of really amazing things about what's going on, and none of it's what we're being told in the news.
Can you share anything?
Well, it not being censored, no.
Okay.
What's going on there is the New World Order. Whatever happens in Ukraine that determines whether this New World government is going to really. It's a pivotal. What's happening there is pivotal.
Okay. Well, that's helpful.
That's really all I can say.
Yeah. That's very helpful to know.
So what can we do to help the Ukraine? Is it about sending positive energy, staying away from the fear? Like, how can we help that as an individual?
Well, I would feed the energy, the meditative energy of positivity and healing to the actual people, because I wouldn't say, help the Ukrainian government or help the Russian government or help any of these things, because we don't know what's going on, and we don't want to feed our energy into something that we shouldn't be. So just think about the children, the people, hold them in your hearts and prayers and in your meditations, and not get involved in the political hubbub or any of the propaganda going around, because none of it's true.
Yeah. That's Michelle, that's a great question, and Corey, that was a great answer. Yeah, it's so confusing, and so this is what we need to do. I agree completely. I think that is what we need to do, is to focus on the people, not the governments of either side.
Yes.
So, yeah, that makes
a
lot of sense. The governments are, I missed that. What did you say?
None of the governments are trustworthy. None of them.
Yeah, that's true.
None of them.
Yep, absolutely the truth. So what are your feelings on people making their own contact with ETs, reaching out and trying to communicate with ETs?
I mean, you can do that, and, you'll probably, most of the contact you will get, you may not recognize. It'll be through dreams and subconscious type of communication, like I said. But be careful what you wish for, because you can also summon some negative beings that come in and that look like angels, and they tell you all the right things that make you feel good, make you feel special, make you feel important. And the next thing you know, you're in a bad situation. So there are a lot of negative entities out there that are tricksters that are being sent out to confuse us right now. So I would say to most people, stop looking outside, look inward. We're all fragments of the one infinite creator. We're all no matter how crappy our existence is, it's special to the one infinite creator because it wanted to have that experience. It wanted to experience everything possible. And that's why we have amnesia and don't remember what we are, because if we remembered we were a fragment of God, there's no way we would go through this crap. But
we wouldn't put up with it.
No. Yeah. So don't get so caught up in ETs and beings outside of yourself. Look inward. Get your traumas and insecurities under control and become a whole person who can use their mind and their emotions and balance, and not just jump from thing to thing off of emotions or get so caught up in your mind that you don't feel. Find a balance. And once you find that balance, you might find a lot more contact than you expected because you're ready at that point. Otherwise, you're going to get a diminished and a different type of contact unless, quite honestly, it's negative beings.
Yeah. You don't want that. Now, when you talk about getting your own traumas healed and your fears under control, you've been exposed to a lot of really advanced technology. And one of the most powerful, I think, is sound. And are there any sound programs or outputs that you know about that would help people with this? Because I know there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that's actually pretty good for PTSD and things like that.
Yeah, I know there's like rice technology, and there's also these audio tones. There's a lot of different stuff that we're kind of experimenting with, and we have to learn how to combine them together and use them in concert in different ways, along with meditative states and other types of technology. I think we're in the infancy kind of it. But when I was in the programs, they could turn on an antenna, a little radio type thing that had an antenna on it. They wave it around your body. It basically picked up the frequencies of all the DNA and all of the different things from your body. And if it picked up the frequency of cancer or a frequency of another terrible disease, they then had a different device that wasn't a receiver, it was a transmitter, and it would transmit a frequency that would turn off the frequency of the genetics of the cancer or the disease, and it would just go inert. And it just go inert. And so they have the ability, I lost an aunt to cancer knowing this technology existed. All of this stuff is really upsetting, knowing that it existed and has existed. But they have technologies that can prolong, the lifespan and quality of life in humanity for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about, is wouldn't that be nice, especially for people who are suffering from, we all are suffering from some kind of emotional trauma, and it gets stuck in our cells, and then it leads to other problems. But, just having a sound program, a sound system that can help us to release it, like the one you described with the antenna that can make it go inert, so it's not continually running us on a hamster wheel of anxiety or depression or whatever people go through. So and they have this. So our government has this right now in their hot little hands, and they're just not willing to share it with anybody.
Oh, yeah.
Well, darn it. Yeah, so you said it was upsetting to you because you lost a loved one who could have been saved by this.
Yeah, and they're not going to release this technology anytime soon. People talk about med beds and all of these different things coming out, and I'm not hearing any of this stuff. I'm not hearing that anybody's preparing to release med beds. I hear of different people developing the technologies that you and I were talking about earlier, working in concert, and they're learning the bio-neural frequencies of different diseases, and they're developing a lot of that right now. But it's nowhere close in the civilian sector, ready to be released, and the secret groups are not going to release it.
Yeah, that's just one more strike against them. So, that's really awful. That's too bad, because so many people are suffering on so many levels, and it could be alleviated, but that's not their goal. That's not why they have the technology. So, plus the energy technology they have is huge.
The more we suffer, the more we feed this Orion group,
Right. Yeah, the more they like
it. Why would they make our quality of life, any better than it is now?
Right. Yeah, those stinkers. What about this? I have a question for you. The difference between angels and ETs. Some people say they're the same thing.
Well, it does depend on perspective. The Anshar and different groups I've been in communication with, they were in communication with people 2,000-3,000 years ago. And to the consciousness level of 2,000-3,000 years ago, if you showed someone 3,000 years ago a submarine, and with their language and understanding of the time, asked them to describe what they saw, what are they going to tell you? And if an ET comes down and talks with them and is positive and gives them information that is good and then ascends back into the sky, how are they going to describe that? Are they going to say extraterrestrials came down in an obvious craft made of technology, or are they going to be drawn to their kind of mythologies and understanding of the time and language of the time and say that a chariot floated down and communicate it in that type of language? So the people out there, I have people that communicate all the time saying, all aliens are the devil. They're all demons, and you're partially right. Some of them are the demons from the book that you study, and some of these ETs are the angels. But these are physical beings we're talking about. We have beings that are up in the more angelic realms that are interacting and having a lot to do with the evolution of galaxies that many in the top secret programs were unaware of until recently. They were unaware of these higher density beings. They just thought about these flesh and blood reptilians and flesh and blood Orions, and they were more on that level of thinking, and now they're becoming more aware of these higher density negative and positive beings that play a larger role in what's going on, and they find themselves in new waters.
Interesting. Goodness. Please, Corey, give us your website again for your graphic novel and for your course so people can come find you.
Well, CoreyGoode.com is the best place for a portal to find everything. But DisclosureComics.com and AscensionWorks.tv, and those places you'll be able to find all my work.
What a wonderful hour and a half this has been. Just very
exciting.
Been
amazing.
Yes.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Amazing. Oh, well, thank you, Corey. And please, we would love it. And we hear your voice is kind of going, so we'll have to do our continued conversation when you're feeling up to it. You can let us know. We'll make ourselves available off the air, and we'd love to have you back. And thank you so much for being with us tonight. This is just incredible. Just incredible.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Good. Well, we did too.
We've
that's
enjoyed
for sure. Yes. Very exciting. We got to ask you so many questions, and you had answers. So thank you so much. So next week, everybody, we will be back with another great show. And until then, be safe, and we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girlz.
Thank you for watching the Sphere Being Alliance channel. Make sure you click on subscribe and smash the bell to make sure you're receiving all the new content from the Sphere Being Alliance YouTube channel.